Welcome to The Good Word. My name is Vincent Goodwill, senior NBA reporter for Yahoo Sports. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by Isis Young. You guys know her as Ice on this here show. Former college basketball player at Florida and Syracuse. She will be joining us here every Wednesday for Wednesdays with Ice. She's, of course, is a NBA analyst and a WNBA analyst here at Yahoo Sports. It's great to have you on a regular basis, Ice. That way we can sort out some of the some of the notes that's going on in your life right now. We go fix Ice's life.
Every Wednesday. I'm looking forward to it. Every Wednesday, y'all. So Ice, let's start off with this. Let's start off with, of course, the big blockbuster on late Friday night. I was getting dressed to get on the airplane the next morning and not get dressed, but pack my stuff and all this other type of stuff. And all of a sudden you get the alerts and you're like, oh, Karl Towns to the Knicks. Okay. So Karl Towns to the Knicks. Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo are going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Big deal, of course. There was all these different machinations because of the luxury tax aprons and everything else. But for all intents and purposes, those are the names that you guys need to worry about. Now, Ice, I'm not sure if this deal is actually going to be great for either side for a number of reasons, but I'm very curious what you think. Yeah. I think my first initial thought for the Knicks was I thought that it made sense. I thought that, Karl Anthony-Towns is a floor spacer, him and the addition of a call, and it just helps the Knicks overall get better, right? Sometimes we see these trades and teams don't get better, clearly on paper. I think that they got better and got a piece that they needed. I'll say my first thought with Karl Anthony-Towns going to the Knicks was his mindset. His mentality. That is actually more of a concern of mine, is don't go to New York and not be and fit the culture of New York. Ooh. That is what they have created there. That they are some dogs. That is what Jalen Brunson and company have built there. I think, Coach Thibodeau has done a great job of continuing to build that. And for Karl Anthony-Towns, getting the chance to play again for him, there's some chemistry. Hopefully there's a great relationship that still exists there and they can make, a fruitful things happen. But I just want Kat to go to New York and have the right mentality. Have the right mentality to fit the team. And I think that will be what they need in order to get over the hump. And then obviously, lastly, they're trying to do everything in their power to compete with Boston. I think this helps them compete against the Celtics. That is what I'll say for the Knicks.
It's so weird, right? Because you made an important point about the culture. And Julius Randle, for those who didn't know, we talked about this. I think I talked about this with David Aldridge a couple of weeks ago. We talked about players to watch this season. And he was on the list because the Knicks took off when Julius Randle's shoulder went out in late January and Jalen Brunson assumed a much more assertive tone for that team. Now you add Mikal Bridges. And you have Bridges on the wing. You have Josh Hart on the wing. You also have OG Anunoby on the wing. So you have all these interchangeable parts that can defend everything from 2 to 4, in some cases 1 through 4. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to insulate Karl Towns and defensively some of those deficiencies and say, you know what? If you can't get to the paint, Karl Towns is a really good rebounder. He will commit the silly fouls, which I think will drive Tibbs up a wall. But I do think there was something in that second round series against the Denver Nuggets where Minnesota looked better in large stretches of that series with Rudy Gobert off the floor and not defending Nikola Jokic and Karl Towns defending them. Now, granted, once again, a completely different scheme. The playoffs are a more physical brand of basketball where you can get away with stuff. And then Karl can also commit the silly fouls. So it's one of those things that I say it multiple times because it's so glaring. But if you're the Knicks, one of these things has to be said. If Jalen Brunson doesn't take a below market extension this summer, this deal cannot be made because they would be so hard capped to make the deal. They'd be in the same situation, honestly, as the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are basically up against the second apron, and they got this ownership stuff going on. They gave up all these draft picks for Rudy Gobert. So you wound up having to trade Karl Towns because Karl Towns signed such a massive extension 2 years ago that kicks in this year that they didn't want to be up against it. Okay, cool. I kind of have a bit of an issue with a team that went to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2004, that won a playoff series for the first time since 2004, not running it back with Anthony Edwards as your centerpiece and saying, hey, guys, let's see if we can do this again. Not that I have a problem with Julius Randle or Donte DiVincenzo, but something about keeping that team together and seeing what happens there. You said something, Ice. You believe that this sets them up for a showdown potentially against the Boston Celtics, who ran away with the Eastern Conference last year. You've got the Milwaukee Bucks to contend with, who we will talk about later in a later segment. You also have the Philadelphia 76ers, who I saw on Media Day. How do you see, do you look at this and say the Knicks needed a center, period, because Mitchell Robinson is out and who knows how long he's going to be out there. They lost Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, do you see this as being a formidable matchup, not just as a floor spacer, but a guy that can keep Joel Embiid occupied if they are in a first round playoff series?
Yeah.
Or a later play, not just first round, any playoff series.
Right. Any playoff series. Yeah. I mean, yes, I think that we can acknowledge that in picking up Cat, you are getting certain offensive production and benefits from him. But yes, there are also defensive liabilities, right? So could you say that a matchup against Embiid, he's going to get crushed? Sure, possibly, absolutely. But Embiid also has to guard him. He also has to use him, right? And so it's vice versa. I think it's all about matchups. And so I just think that they needed a center for sure. They needed a big player for sure. They needed a floor spacer as well. With as much as Brunson likes to get downhill, Hart, same thing. They needed someone that could space the floor but still have size. So I don't think they were going to get a perfect fit that was going to fit offensively and defensively. But I think Cat solves a lot of those issues. And I think with scheme and matchups, possibly can you cover? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, look, I think the important thing to know is, like you said, this is not a perfect match. You don't find centers who are 7 feet tall, athletically inclined to defend at the rim and finish at the rim and space the floor. Those guys don't grow on trees, and if they do, they're knuckleheads. Let's be perfectly honest. I know a couple of guys like that, and they're pure knuckleheads, right? No, seriously, it's what it is. It's very rare that you're going to find all of those things, and you're looking at Karl and you're saying, the important part for me is, Ice, they are making such a huge investment in Jalen Brunson as superstar. Like, in Jalen Brunson, not just as superstar, king of the Knicks, king of New York, they're saying you're going to be the best player on a team that takes us to the NBA Finals. Like, that's what this is all about, taking the New York Knicks through the treacherous top of the Eastern Conference. It's very top heavy. And you're saying that this guy at 6'0", and the last two guys to take a team at that height as the undisputed best player to the NBA Finals, Isaiah Thomas, Allen Iverson. You're saying that this guy is in that same class of superstar. I don't see it. I'm not saying that he can't be productive. I'm not saying that he isn't even, a superstar great player, top tier great player. I'm saying that is a historical thing to say. And you've got the floor spacer in Karl Towns. You got the best wing defender in Bridges, which I think has kind of gone under the radar in this whole Karl Towns equation. I think the Knicks have just loaded up, and they've loaded up Ice under the belief that this is going to be the guy to take us there.
I think we knew that, though. You know, we knew that when we saw Jalen Brunson not take the money that he deserved and rightfully should have. I think we knew that the Knicks organization and franchise was under the opinion, and so was Brunson, that I need to be here. They can do it through me. He was willing to sacrifice dollars to bring in someone that could help his team and get behind him. So I think we knew that. Whether it works out or not is the beauty in basketball and getting trades and bringing different people in. But I think Brunson, through what they were able to do in the playoffs last year, solidified to the franchise and to New York City and to the league that I could get it done. It's some things that can happen with the right pieces around. He can get it done. I understand what you're saying, though. I think the level of Isaiah Thomas and Allen Iverson, it's not there yet, right? And can it get there? We won't know until he wins, right? We won't know until it happens, if it's possible. But it is definitely a tall feat. But there's nothing better as a player than having people behind you and the belief in you. And he has all the belief in New York to go and get a championship and everybody follow him. And that's what you need.
I mean, he would own that city. Let's be perfectly honest here. Like there's nothing like, and I didn't cover the Eastern Conference playoffs last year. Maybe I'm going to do that this year. You know what I mean? Like maybe something happens. Like I'm under the belief I am like very old school. Like I got records in the background. You know, I got vinyl in the background. Like I'm old school like that. So I'm old school in a way that
yes, Unc.
Yeah, don't do that. I ain't that old. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. You ain't gonna have me sitting up somewhere calling somebody Michelle on because everybody want to call me Unc. No. That's not what we doing here. Okay. All right.
Okay.
For one, I am of the belief that the league is so much better when you have these Midwest teams like the Detroits and the Chicagos being a linchpin for like greatness and all of that type of stuff, right? That's just what the history has told us. But let's just say all that I-95 stuff, you know, Philly, New York, Boston, that makes for some great regional matchups. That makes for some great, you know, playoff potential. Like two of these teams are going to be facing each other. Like if everything stays equal, if these teams stay healthy, if these teams play up to expectations, you're going to have, by and large, 3 50-win teams in a game of musical chairs, which is going to make the regular season that much more interesting because you're going to be jockeying for playoff position. You're going to be maybe trying to avoid one team. Maybe you're trying to get home court advantage in a 7-game series because we know how important a Game 7 is in your building. I think it makes for a very compelling regular season in the East Coast as a whole, and everybody believes that the world revolves around New York City. All right, whatever. But Minnesota, because I feel like Minnesota gets short thrift in this discussion, because the best player on both of these teams might be Anthony Edwards, right? Anthony Edwards could very well be the best player on either one of these teams. And they just came from a Western Conference Finals appearance. And now you add in a guy in Julius Randle, which shoulder injuries, I don't think we give enough credit to being really laborious. And because with Paul George, it took him a while to come back from that shoulder surgery. If Julius Randle is himself, that's a guy that can take a little bit of playmaking off of the shoulders of Anthony Edwards and a little bit off of Mike Conley. He can initiate offense from different places. He can initiate offense from the mid post and from the block. I think in some ways it might not help them get to the finals, but it makes them a little bit more dynamic on that end and changes the math a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with the playmaking ability. And I also think, too, because of Julius Randle and the positions that he plays, he takes the usage rate of Naz Reid down a little bit, which is so important. I love the production that they consistently get out of Naz Reid. I think it's important to continue to build him. And so when you have Randle come in there, he takes the usage rate and lowers that for Naz Reid. But also he matches the energy that you need to play with for an Anthony Edwards. I think I'm big on culture and energy and chemistry because these things down the stretch of winning playoffs and winning series, these things matter, that teams are on the same page, that they are aligned in that way. And so I also feel like it's a good pickup as a veteran player that knows how to defend, knows how to get in your face, like will do what it takes in order to win games and hopefully get them back to a Western Conference final. So I think it's a good pickup. And then, you know, when you add Donte, right, it's a shooter. Who doesn't like a reliable shooter that continue to space the floor, gives you a little bit more depth? I think both of these trades are beneficial for both teams. It'll be interesting to see which one gets more out of it towards the end of it, but I think they both get very good benefits and fit needs that are a little bit different. And that also help the players that are already there to help them flourish a little bit more, right? You don't want to take away anything from those players that are there. You want to add to them. And I think Randle adds to Edwards. He adds to Reeds. He adds to all the other collectives.
Yeah, I think I'm not as optimistic as most people are. Like the initial thought is, oh, the Knicks are going all in. They're going to the finals. And of course, that's the temptation because they're the New York Knicks.
Right.
I have some doubts. I got doubts on both sides because I do think that Minnesota had something really interesting with the matchup problem that Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert, who's everybody's punching bag, presents for other teams. And maybe they were just built to beat one team. And they beat that one team in the Denver Nuggets, and you're not going to beat everybody in the Western Conference that way. This is going to be a total different Western Conference, especially if you consider the Memphis Grizzlies returning to relevance if they have health, if Ja Morant keeps his head on straight, which we haven't had any indications or any knowledge that he does not. So it's a lot of different things that teams have to contend with. I'm curious about how all this plays out.
Same. One final thing that I think we have to bring up because we're going to talk about Dikembe Mutombo next. The owners pressed really hard for this second apron and the more punitive ways that you can build a team and how restrictive it is to add to a team once you spend so much money. The Knicks and Timberwolves managed to pull this off through loopholes, pretty much, where, not to get too much into it, y'all, but once you reach a certain amount of salary spent, you can no longer take in more salary than you put out. And neither the Knicks nor the Timberwolves actually did that because they wound up signing a couple players barely above the veterans minimum. They had Charlotte come in and help facilitate the trade. It's a loophole pretty much. But when you have a hard cap, and I know it's boring and I don't like it. Look, I ain't trying to deflate any employee from making any dollar whatsoever. This is a free market, Ice. I'm trying to get all of my money, and I don't want nobody saying, because you made this amount, that means Vinnie can't make this amount. No, that is not the way we work here, but that is the world that the owners have kind of managed to work themselves into. Props to them. I just don't really rock with it. Now, Ice, we got to sort of turn this on to a somber note. Dikembe Mutombo, for those who I'm sure have all figured out and heard by now, it was announced that he passed away Monday morning at the age of 58 due to brain cancer. We had known that he had been in poor health for quite a long time, even beyond the considerable NBA accomplishments. Played at Georgetown with Alonzo Mourning under the tutelage of the legendary and late John Thompson. Got to the Denver Nuggets, was the catalyst for the number one upset that we'll ever think of, the original 1-8 5-game series, Denver-Seattle, 1994, him clutching the ball, like that great scene that is etched in our minds forever, the finger wag, the 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards that is tied with Ben Wallace. And who's the other guy? It's Dwight Howard. I think it's Dwight Howard. Gobert, excuse me, not Dwight Howard. Gobert, forgive me for that. Rudy Gobert, the punching bag that I forgot about. And Ice, he done so many great things off the floor. Like, his basketball legacy is huge and it's critical and it's massive, especially when you consider what he done in Africa, what he's done for players to come in there now. But his greatest, you can say, accomplishments came off the floor. Like, it's amazing that he was able to do both in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind when thinking about Mutombo is just impact. It's impact. The global impact that he had. You talked about building up the continent of Africa, starting schools and camps and donations and everything else like that, and just educating the world on where he comes from, his people, and bridging that gap. And then I think the impact that he had, personally on so many different people. I think just scrolling through social media and seeing all the sentiments about him, like larger than life, just kept coming up. Everyone called him larger than life. And so I think it's a great reminder. It made me feel as if, we hope to get more years out of Kobe, right? That you could just tell that the second act was going to be better than the first one. And so I think it continues to give us a standard of these athletes who build this platform because they're so fantastic at bouncing a ball or rebounding or scoring, but it shows the platform and the impact and the standard that you can also have off of the court and after. And so I think it's just amazing to see the impact that he had. And I just honestly am thankful that our game was able to experience him.
Yeah, I think even when you spin it back to basketball, or I won't say this is basketball because we're going to have some fun here. The author of the greatest line of one of these urban legends that turned out to be true. Who wants to sex Mutombo? Go look it up. I promise y'all I'm not lying, right? Promise y'all I'm not lying, right? There we go. Hopefully I didn't get anybody in trouble by saying that on these here airwaves. But in 2001, even beyond the whole Denver Nuggets experience, the 1-8 stuff, right? He went to Atlanta as a free agent in 96 going into 97. There was the whole, Jordan never dunked on him, all that stuff happened in the 97 playoffs. But in 2001, and this is one of those crazy seminal moments. The All-Star game used to really mean something back then. And in 2001, that All-Star game where the East had the massive comeback, you guys remember Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury. The catalyst for that was actually Dikembe Mutombo, who was defending all those bigs in the paint. And it made the Philadelphia 76ers say, we want to go get this guy.
That game said, let's go get this guy. In 2001, that's how important the All-Star game was, where you can look at a seminal performance and say, let's go get this guy. And they wound up getting Mutombo, going to the NBA Finals on that great run led by Allen Iverson. Like, they were without so many guys. Everybody was hurt. It was literally going up against maybe, arguably, the single greatest playoff team we've ever seen this side of the Golden State Warriors in 2017. Those 2001 Lakers, prime Shaq, prime Kobe, they got a game off of them when nobody got a game off of those guys. And Mutombo was the catalyst in that game, along with Allen Iverson scoring 48 points in that overtime win, the step over Ty Lue, all that type of stuff. So he has even a greater sort of sense of defensively. We talk about the offense. We talk about what the stretch fives, all these bigs and everything else. When the big man really meant something in the NBA, especially defensively, it's almost like the running game in the NFL where nobody runs the ball anymore. They just want to throw the ball around the yard. But man, when you have an intimidating presence down in the paint, that changes everything that you do. You're like, I'm not going down there, A, because I don't want to be on that Summer Jam screen, and B, we can't do anything with him. He literally shut down the lane. He might have been, out of all of John Thompson's pupils, that's Patrick Ewing, that's Alonzo Mourning, he might have been the single greatest defensive player to come out of that school.
Yeah, I think we can't give enough praise. We can't give enough praise to him. And I think we have talked, had conversations before about this generation of basketball compared to that generation of basketball and the differences. But even just culturally speaking, like when someone is teaching you basketball and they're teaching you to block a shot, what's the first thing that they do after it's the finger wag, right? It's just like, it's Mutombo. Like, that is how you learn. And so I think with you saying that he is, one of the best defensive players to ever come out of Georgetown and period, like, we know him because of his defense, because he protected the paint and then let you know about it with his finger.
No. And he's part of that great commercial where he slapped the cereal out of the kids. I'm all for teaching these kids. Don't be out here grabbing cereal in the grocery store. You know what happened if I grabbed some cereal in the grocery store around my parents? I'd have got the Mutombo finger wag and then something else later at the crib. Teach them young. That's what I'm about. Teaching them young. Now, of course, on Media Day, Ice, it's a happy day. It's like the first day of school, right? Everybody's in their uniforms, get the new sponsors on, you're taking all the pictures, you're doing all the silly stuff. And then we got our buddy Draymond Green in Golden State. And of course, with Golden State, there's no Klay Thompson. You still got Steph Curry on an extension. Draymond Green has 3 years left on his deal. It's a whole new team there, and they didn't even make the playoffs last year. You could say in large part due to games Draymond Green missed early in the season. When he got back, he was a wrecking crew, especially on defense, which prompted the question at Media Day about there being worry about Draymond Green. John, let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
Why they worry about me? I am a successful black man in America doing incredibly well. What's the worry about me?
They worry about you.
There are way more people in this world to worry about than me, that's for sure.
But we're here now. So
we're all here. I don't think you should worry about me.
Okay.
I'm doing pretty well. If you would have told me when I was 13 years old in Saginaw, Michigan, without a pot to piss in, that you'd be sitting here and somebody would say they're worried about you, I would have probably told them they were out of their mind. I'd be sitting here and they'd be worried about me.
So he only played 55 games last year. He missed 17 due to suspension or having to be away from the team on a team-issued, you need to go somewhere and sit down and think about all the things that you've done. Do you think that was Draymond a little bit deflecting Ice from the standpoint of, I know what you mean, but I'm going to shift the conversation in such a way that makes it more big picture than exactly what the question was intended? Or you think that's Draymond framing himself in such a way that he's trying to keep a sense of perspective?
Oh, I don't think it's the second one. I don't think there was much perspective used there.
I gotta leave it open for you, Ice. I gotta leave it open for you.
I appreciate that, but I don't think it was perspective. I think he was trying to control the narrative, which is something that I teach athletes that I work with and do media training with, that when you get an answer, you as the athlete, you have the power to control the narrative and take it any which way you want. Here are my thoughts. My thoughts are that rather than you acknowledging that what the reporter said is true, it is true that we are worried. It's fair that we're worried. We being the fans of Golden State, just them, right? That's who he was pertaining to. The fans of Golden State are worried about you. Absolutely. You have been consistent and been around for 13 years. You are a successful Black man, which is why we're worried. Because you are successful. You are at this level. You've been doing this for so long, but yet you showed us in your most recent season, I can only go off the most recent season, that sometimes you don't know how to act. And you've had to be sat down 17 times. You played 55 games. And like you said, a credit to him, when he played, he was on a tear in the second half of the season defensively. And so it's okay for fans to be worried because, hey, we need our guy. We need our guy playing. We lost Clay. We're still hurt over that. We might be still hurt over Jordan Poole going a couple years ago. I was hurt over that. And now you're back. And so to me, it's like, that narrative and question was fair to ask. Like, me as an athlete, me as a reporter, it was fair to say that we're worried. Draymond, I think, should have taken it a different way and acknowledged that. Hey, like, I appreciate our fans being loyal. I'm getting better. I'm here to play this season. I'm here to be on the court. I'm here to help us win. I'm here to help us do whatever. Not the side note of, I'm a successful Black man. Why would anybody be worried about me? Dude, that's why we're not worried about you. You know what it is, and you should have just acknowledged it rather than taking it the other way. And I just felt like it's just like it kind of goes along with what he's given us, in the past year or so. Like, media day and you picking fights. I don't know.
Well,
still worried.
Yes.
Now I'm still worried.
Well, here's the crazy thing. And I hate this word because people have turned this word into like a social media phenomenon. Like, he was a little more demure. Had he been a little more demure, we would have said, man, Draymond don't got his edge no more. He's not as feisty anymore. Like, you don't want Draymond playing like catatonic. You don't want him playing like he's going to put someone in the $1 million dream sleeper hold. But you do want him playing with that edge. Like, Golden State is not Golden State as we know them without Draymond Green being arguably one of the most unique defenders we've ever seen, especially in this era of switching everything basketball. Like, he's a basketball genius from the standpoint of knowing where to be, knowing where you're supposed to be, being able to defend at all three levels, being able to protect the rim, move his feet, all that. Even as he's getting older, he's still defensively pretty damn adept and pretty damn good. When he's dominating the game, Golden State is damn near unbeatable. And when you come off a season where you won 46 games and you found yourself in the play-in, that means the margin for error is very, very thin. That also means San Antonio is getting better because Big Slim, y'all. Big Slim is coming. Houston is getting better. I already mentioned the Memphis Grizzlies if they have themselves right. Golden State can't afford. I don't know what constitutes a successful season for the Golden State Warriors. You know what I mean, Ice? I don't know what constitutes success for them. Is it getting to the second round? Because I don't know if the conference finals, I don't know if those days exist anymore of maybe getting to the finals. Like that, we're going to look back at the 2022 championship run. We're going to be like, man, they squeezed one out of their behinds. Yeah. We're going to look back at that and be like, we're not going to say lucky because I don't think you win 4 championships by luck and you don't win the 4th championship by luck. We're going to say they seized an opportunity that was right there in front of them that never popped up again. And almost immediately from that point, everything started crumbling. Like you said, the aforementioned Jordan Poole situation, the $1 million dream sleeper hold on Rudy Gobert, all of those things that has happened since. Now you've got Steve Kerr. Yes, he's locked up for the future. Stephen Curry is locked up until 2027, I believe. So you can shut down a lot of that noise to some degree. To some degree, I would say. I don't think it completely shuts down any noise. I think they have some personnel questions they have to answer. Who's going to start at the shooting guard? Now that Klay Thompson is gone, you lose a big chunk of your identity. What type of Andrew Wiggins are you going to get this year? You got a lot of different questions and a lot of moving parts. But the biggest moving part for that is Draymond Green and his availability.
Yep. And I think with where he is in his career and what he's been through, the goal is to not be something you have to worry about, you know? Like that is the goal. The goal is that no one should have to worry about you. We know exactly what we're getting from you. We know that you're going to be a leader, bring this team together, and that hopefully you have made improvements on and off the court, where what we saw last year, we don't see this year. And so I think overall, like, you know, it's fair but critical. That's the world that we're in, right? Like, it's fair but critical. It's fair to be worried, but at the same time, we're critical of someone who has shown us how good they can be in this league and how needed they are for their team.
Ice, you are clairvoyant. Or you just saw the rundown. Because you know what's coming after the other side of this break. We're going to talk a lot about what's fair questions. We're going to talk a lot about, hey, what can we ask and who can ask them? Right here on the other side, we're going to take a break right here, pay some bills. But we'll be back with Ice on this episode of The Good Word. Welcome back on today's episode of The Good Word with Ice. Ice, we've got some teams that have a lot on the line headed into the season. Some of the over-unders have come out. Of course, Media Day has signaled that the season is right around the corner. It's actually less than 3 weeks away, y'all. Like, I'm still trying to get the sand from beneath my toes off of this summer. I'm not ready for the season to begin. But we both picked two teams each that have a lot on the line. Ice, I'm going to begin with you because your first team was my first team. So we're just going to go back and forth. And you led, like I led, with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, Bucks. My first thought really was just Damian Lillard. Like, he wants to win. You know, he wants to win. He made that move, a big move, because he wants to win. They lost last year, first round to the Pacers. Obviously, Pacers team that was playing extremely good basketball at that point in the season, but still lost in the first round. Hopefully now they have a healthy Chris Middleton, and so you add him. My question is, since we said we were posing questions, is like for Doc Rivers, like, What can you do with what you have? Almost, what is the expectation here? But it's got to be better than to get past the first round. I think if you have another exit like that, we have a serious problem, and all these moves were made in vain, and we're keeping players who are healthy like Chris Middleton and not maximizing their last years. So those are some of the questions that I feel like the Bucks have a lot to answer, which is why they have so much on the line this season.
Yeah, the over-under has them, I believe, at 50.5 wins. That's what Vegas is saying, 50.5. I don't even know if the premium on the season is getting to a particular number. I think for them, for the Bucks, it's about being healthy and playing coherent basketball headed into the playoffs. The problem is everybody says that. The Knicks are going to say that. The Knicks are going to say, we want to be playing our best basketball going into the playoffs. The thing nobody says is you have to build good habits in the regular season. You have to have some sweat equity to build off on in the regular season. The reason that this team has won a grand total of one playoff series since winning the 2021 NBA championship, by and large, has been health. Giannis hasn't been healthy, or Chris Middleton hasn't been healthy, or some combination of Giannis and Dame most recently not being healthy. Giannis played 73 games last year, and because of that left calf injury, missed all of that Pacers series. I think we can all almost agree. If Giannis were healthy, they win that series, and then you move on and you see what happens and what they do against the Knicks. The problem is because of Dame's age, because of Giannis's soon-to-be age, I don't know if y'all know this, and we go through this with like the old guys. We talk about this with the Stephs and the LeBrons and the KDs. KD being 36 and Steph being the same age and LeBron turning 40. So it doesn't sound so bad. But Giannis Antetokounmpo will turn 30 on December 6th, I believe. Like, his birthday is a couple days after mine. But he's been in the league for a long time. You know what I mean, Ice?
That's a lot of miles.
You know what it is? It's not highway miles. These ain't miles where you're going 80 on the freeway and you're just playing run and gun basketball. This man moves around like a rock'em sock'em robot. I don't know if y'all know what that is back in the day. Go look up the term. I can't help y'all if y'all don't know what it is. That is a rock'em sock'em robot. Like, he plays Tibbs minutes and he don't even play for Tibbs, right? Like, he is such a physical, imposing player that makes him very special. But you also wonder if it has a cumulative effect on how effective and how long he will be able to be as effective as he is at this point, and he was 4th in MVP voting this past year. He was 3rd the year before. So let's not get it twisted. Like, he's still a top 5 player in the game. He is the most devastating force on both ends, but he has to be healthy. He and Dame Lillard said on media day that they weren't able to get together over the summer because, to work on, their own court chemistry. Giannis had gotten married. Dame, of course, was going through, his divorce process and everything else. There's the Olympics. There's all these other things. But those two have to make it work. And to your point about Chris Middleton, we already know he's going to be held out of camp because of the surgeries on both of his ankles. So you have, I won't say issues there, but you already know that when a player is hurt and frequently hurt, he don't get healthier as he gets older. So it's a lot more questions and concerns adding to the Doc Rivers factor. I think Doc is going to be better, Ice, because he's not coming in the middle of the season. He's not having to take over and start over in January or December or whatever it was. Like, he's had a full year to get to know these guys and an offseason to at least start implementing what he's going to do. But I don't know how much it's going to matter if Giannis isn't healthy.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's our conversations with a lot of these teams, right? I mean, we talk about the Clippers. The Clippers was a team that I felt like has a lot on the line, right? Kawhi just had knee surgery. It'll be interesting to see how they manage him. Everything about the Clippers and their success will depend on his health. I truly believe that. Harden has a player option after this season. Where is he going to go? Where is he going to go? He's going to stay right there. Where is he going to go? I don't really want to have that conversation about James Harden. I think he's going to stay exactly where he is. But also, they have a new arena that seats 18,000. Man, 18,000. The Intuit Dome.
Toilets. We got toilets, dog. Maybe John's going to put that drop in there. Toilets!
There's a phone charger at every seat. Did you know that? I don't go to a ton of games in person because I'm always at the broadcast table. So we have outlets, literal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a phone charger at every seat.
I think it's in the high class seats. I don't think it's in every. I think it's in like at least I could be wrong. I thought it was like in the lower level, like higher end seats, but you got to bring your own phone cord. Like
phone
they ain't
chargers.
provide.
I just have each seat has a phone charger.
That is amazing. If that's the case, that is amazing. Can you imagine a power outage in that joint? Because apparently John just corrected. Yes, they do. I stand corrected. A charging port in every single seat. I went on the tour of that ice a year and a half ago. It was during the Clippers-Suns playoff series, right? Mm-hmm. And it was still getting built. It's like the Intuit Dome, and then a little bit across the way, it's the Rams. I can't think SoFi. It's SoFi, and on the other side of SoFi, it's the Fabulous Forum. Like, it's all in Inglewood, and it looks better. Say almost. It does look better than LA Live, right? LA Live outside of LA Live don't look like much. All right, that's a conversation for another day. But we brought up Giannis and Giannis's health. Kawhi Leonard. He played a lot of games last year, and then once again, he wasn't right during the playoffs, and everything that happened during USA basketball was a bit on the sketchy side.
Yes.
Shall we say?
Yes.
He had another knee procedure over the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if Kawhi Leonard didn't play 40 games this year. I would be shocked if he played more than half the season. Like, I just think that's where he is in his career. That's the atrophy that he's had on his body. Like, you think of surgery. Oh, surgery, you have surgery, then you get better. Yeah, I suppose. But it just takes, it's a cumulative effect, the wear and tear on your body. And you just said James Harden. James, that reminds me of James Harden. It's like, I haven't been in this spot, Ice. Friends have. I haven't been in this spot. But I've heard a woman say to a dude before, don't nobody love you but me. You ain't going nowhere. Like dude, one of my friends, Ice. I'm gonna tell you a quick story because this is the most hilarious story. All right. I was going on a trip. This is like 15 years ago. And I was a young beat writer. And I was telling my friend, hey, after the game, let's hang out. Right? Maybe the national title game, football game was on or something like that. But he stayed maybe like 30, 35 minutes away from downtown. So he calls me and he says, my wife says that she doesn't think that I should come out tonight because it's so late and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm like, but it sounds like you're either in the wind tunnel or you're in your car. And he says, I am in my car. I said, but you said you're not coming out because your wife said not to come out. And all of a sudden, I hear his car cut on and I hear his engine rev because he cut on his car and he just started pressing the gas. He wasn't going anywhere, just pressing the gas. Vroom, vroom, vroom. And I'm like, what are you doing? He says, I'm out here to let her know I really mean business. About 10 minutes later, he took his happy ass back inside the house. And you know what? She wasn't the least bit worried. That is the LA Clippers with James Harden. He can rev and huff and puff. He ain't going nowhere, and neither are they. Right?
Nope, not at all.
Now, mind you,
not at all.
That friend is still married.
Smart guy.
He ain't stupid. He ain't. If he hears this, he's going to dispute the facts of this story. But I can assure you that the facts of this story are absolutely true. Now, can they overcome the lower or meager expectations? Like BetMGM has taken their over-under off the books, which means they don't know what the hell type of team the Clippers are going to show up. Is James Harden and Norm Powell and Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best 3 coaches in basketball, is that going to be enough in this treacherous Western Conference?
I think that they have more question marks than some of these other teams that we have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, you don't know. Like I said, it depends completely upon, to me, if Kawhi is healthy. And then if you talk about he's only going to play maybe 50 games, like that would be nice. Then it's like strategically, how are they using them, right? Then they got to be strategic about winning games and when they can win games. But I just think the competition around them does not have as many question marks as they have. Yeah. So I'm a little more pessimistic.
I'll tell you, team, I'm quietly wondering about my pessimism with them. And this is next for me. The once removed champion Denver Nuggets. They have lost piece after piece after winning that championship a couple of years ago. And they went on one of the more dominant runs. I don't think they played the greatest, the highest level competition, but they went unchallenged and untested during that run. And they only won one playoff series last year, losing in the semis to a Minnesota team that you weren't sure if they ever really got a handle on. They took that 3-2 lead. They won that game 5 in Minnesota after dropping the first 2. And then you just drop the rest of the series. Or you win the game 5 at home. You know what I mean? You lose you lose a game 7 at home, which very rarely happens. And then you lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You re-signed Jamal Murray, who did not look good, not only in the playoffs, but in the Olympics. Like, he looked a little bit on the worn down side. After having a really good regular season, I wonder if the wear and tear on his surgically repaired knees came to bite him. Michael Porter hasn't taken that exponential leap that you want him to take. And now you got Aaron Gordon, who's dealing with all the personal stuff. And then he's in the last year of a contract, where everybody in that starting lineup has gotten paid, with the exception of Caldwell-Pope, who had to go to Orlando to get his money. Can you afford to max him out? It looks like they can afford to max him out if they want to stay underneath the apron, which means, are you entertaining trading him? I'm not saying they are or they should, but I wonder how they're going to play this season out, facing the prospect of having to go through another negotiation with him, who's such a critical glue piece. He's the thing that makes that team go. And the over-under for them is 51 wins, 51 and a half. That sounds like a 3 seed to me in the Western Conference. That sounds like you're behind the Oklahoma City Thunder and maybe another team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're definitely, I think what it is the expectations, right? I mean, because we've seen what this collective nucleus group can do and can do on the court and how dominant they can be, we just have a higher expectation for them putting it all together. I think the only point that I'm going to hint that you said is Michael Porter Jr. To me, that's the player that needs to have that leap of a year in order for them to get to where they want to get back to. I hear you about Jamal Murray, and I think players get tired, right? Like, it's an Olympics year. Yeah. You can be exhausted. We're seeing it right now. We'll talk to NBA soon, but we're seeing it right now with the Aces. They are dog tired, still playing from the Olympics. And so I think he's tired, but I think Michael Porter Jr. would be the player to me that if the Denver Nuggets want to get back to where they were, he needs to take the leap in this year.
Yeah, because you can't ask Nikola Jokic to do more than he's already done.
No, absolutely
and you can't
not.
expect him to be better or more efficient than he's already been. And I'm saying it's going to be a decline or anything like that. I'm just saying after winning 3 MVPs, I don't even know if he's going to be in like the heavy running away from the field conversation to win a 4th and what that would even mean if the load is on him like that. I'm very, very curious for all of this, the Peyton Watsons and all those type of guys, the Christian Browns, like those guys have to step up because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a pretty damn big piece for them defensively. He moved the ball around. He just filled in a lot of different blanks. He and Gordon filled in a lot of different blanks for that starting 5, and now he's gone. It's just piece by piece. Now you're starting to wonder about them. But we're going to take one more break, and when we come back with Ice, we're going to talk a little bit about the W on the floor and a little bit about the W off the floor. Back on a good word here with Isis. Ice. Oh, I'm sorry, I called you by your real name. My bad, Ice. I'm gonna get in. Look, I don't like it when people call me by my birth name, so I'm gonna make sure I get this right with Ice. Ice, we've got 2 series left, or we got basically the WNBA semifinals, and at the time of this recording, the Liberty are up on the Aces 2-0. There was an electric atmosphere at Barclays, and the Sun and Lynx are tied at 1 game apiece. That one is pretty compelling as well. I want to start with the 2-time defending champions. They're down 2-0. They get to go back home. They have not looked like themselves all season, and Becky Hammon basically called their team out and said, it's hard to three-peat. She used some NBA references and saying how difficult it is, and basically saying that she feels like her players have been distracted. Is that what you've seen, or is it something deeper?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've called an Aces game this season. I've listened to these press conferences. Like, Becky Hammon has been pretty consistent about this message that all season there have been distractions, injuries, players out, adversity that this team has had to fight through. And then again, like an Olympics year, the only team, guys, that has 4 starters on the Olympics team. And so I think when you're trying to look at the Aces this season, 3-peats are hard whether you have the same team or not, because everybody else gets better. Everybody else is tired of you beating them. And so they're getting better. They're re-upping. They're getting different players. And so I think, one, what we're seeing is literally just other teams have gotten better. The Minnesota Lynx have gotten better. The New York Liberty have gotten better. The Connecticut Sun have gotten better. They have all picked up crucial pieces to make their teams better. So a year ago, we were looking at the New York Liberty and the Aces, and we're like, those are the super teams, right? You clearly have the best teams on paper that we can compete with. And so it felt like they had to win, right? The expectation was for them to win a second championship. I think this year going into it, what we've seen is that hasn't just been the expectation, right? I think there are people who are like, yes, it would be great. It'd be awesome to see history. And you have the best player in the world, A'ja Wilson. And perhaps that might have been, that's been the biggest distraction, is having the best player in the world in A'ja Wilson, because they've relied on her so much, Vin. They have relied on A'ja Wilson so much to do everything on both sides of the basketball that at times they're not getting what they need from their other core 3 players, the Jackie Young, the Kelsey Plum, the Chelsea Gray. And so I think there
was a moment in game 2, right, where Becky was going at Plum, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's, again, the consistent messaging that Becky Hammon has given us has been, it's our core 4. And then you take away A'ja Wilson because she's leading the league in points and rebounds and blocks. I mean, she's doing all that she can do. But to me, it's really cool to see other teams get better. Like, the reason the Liberty are up 2-0 right now is because Sandy Brondella, head coach for Liberty, said, we need to get a deeper bench and we need to get more length. They went out and got a 24-year-old German rookie, Leonie Fiebisch, who has been playing out of her mind in the playoffs, and not anything different than actually what she's done in the regular season. But now she's starting. Now she's got the confidence to start instead of a 10-plus year vet in Courtney Vandersloot. But then you're also bringing a huge vet off the bench in Courtney Vandersloot. And so I think the Liberty have just built their depth. Sabrina Ionescu is playing the highest level of basketball that we have seen her play, which is what you hope from the best players in the league, is at this time of year, they're playing their best basketball. So I feel like for the Aces, it was a tough expectation for them to win 3 in a row. But I also think we're not giving enough credit to, 1, it being an Olympic year and those players having played tons of games, 4 starters, but 2, the rest of the league getting better and saying, you're not going to beat us a 3rd year in a row.
And don't forget, Breanna Stewart, 2-time champion. So
Yeah.
she's decorated. Like, this is not a stage that is too big for her. Now we're going to flip to the other series. The Sun and the Lynx. The Lynx won game 2 at home after dropping the opener. How do you see that series playing out? Is the Sun defense, is that going to continue to dictate the terms of this series?
Yeah, to me, that's what the series will end up being, is whether the Suns defense is able to dictate. I think they have so much length, so much strength, so much veteran leadership. Like, in the W, the veterans win. It's the older players who win because they know how to get it done. And so Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, who is up there in terms of like top 3 in terms of maybe playoff points scored. She's played the most playoff games ever, DeWanna Bonner. And so they just have a ton of experience. They added Marina Mabry, who is a sharpshooter, who is playing seriously unconscious basketball from 3, shooting lights out. And so I feel like for the Sun, it's all about their defense. And for the Lynx, it's just about them continuing to be balanced on both sides of the basketball. They know that they can defend. They play on one accord. Defensive Player of the Year, Nafisa Collier, who has been scoring the ball exceptionally well. And I think a down game 2 is expected sometimes, right? It happens. Teams are keying in on you. Nafisa Collier would have been the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year if it was not for the year that A'ja Wilson had.
Right.
And so I felt like in that game 2, the Sun are trying to contain her a bit more. Meanwhile, the other role players for the Lynx continue to step up. Courtney Williams, Bridget Carlton, Alana Smith, who's a all defensive player for this team, second team all defense this season. So I just feel like they have a lot of the pieces. But this series to me is the best one in terms of matchups. Like, it's so evenly matched that you're just watching Cheryl Reeve, who won Coach of the Year for WNBA, like, play chess versus checkers with her players and kind of figure it out. And then Stephanie White, who was WNBA Coach of the Year last year. But I feel like it's all about Connecticut and their defense. If their defense can dictate, they'll win. They don't need to score 100 points in order to win. They need to hold you to 85. On the other side for the Lynx, it's about continuing to do what they've done all season. I have been big on the Lynx. I have thought that they were the best team, actually, for the majority of this year. Even despite what the Liberty have shown and produced, I have thought that the Lynx have been the most consistent and best team on both sides of the basketball all year.
So now you brought up coaching. So it opens the door. I'm very curious what you thought of the Chicago Sky firing Teresa Weatherspoon after one season. Like you said, the season seemed to turn when they traded Mabry, right? That's when it seemed to turn. Of course, you've got Angel Reese's rookie year and everything else, a massive amount of attention. And for those who don't know, Teresa Weatherspoon is a charismatic coach. She was a charismatic ball player, but very intense. Is that an all-around mess in Chicago, or is that something where you're not sure about Teresa Weatherspoon and that particular roster?
I'm hoping that it is a blessing in disguise. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping for Teresa Weatherspoon, it's a blessing in disguise. I think I know that Chicago has made some questionable decisions with their franchise in this last several years. You go back a couple of years ago, James Wade, head coach of Chicago, had just won a championship, came back next year and left in the middle of the season to become an assistant coach in the NBA team, on an NBA team. No disrespect to anybody in the NBA, but like, you leave in the middle of a season.
Right.
And y'all just won a championship. What are we talking about here?
Right.
How do we do that? And so I think from that, and then, firing T Spoon, to me, it's just like, she's a legend in the game. You could tell clearly that she was connecting with her players and she was getting them better. They were in a playoff spot. Like, yes, they finished 10th in the league, and so they missed the top 8 in getting into playoffs, but they were in a playoff spot, 8-7 seed all season. Angel Reese having a terrific year. Camila Cardoso having a terrific year. What we saw out of Kennedy Carter. So I felt like it was just injuries. Sometimes it happens. You're bit by the injury bug, the injury worm. You don't recover. And they couldn't finish out games they needed to make the playoffs. But it's her first year. It's her first year. And she was starting 2 rookies. I'm not sure how much better she should have done or could have done. And so for her to be let go, maybe it just was an unrealistic expectation to start on the Chicago Sky. But I absolutely think that she will be back in our league. I think it's so important that we keep legends around, in the game. WNBA and NBA, we give these former players a chance to coach players because they know exactly what they're going through. And it doesn't seem like to me anyone thought Teaspoon didn't know what she was doing or wasn't doing it well. I actually think most of us think she did the best with what she had. And I think she'll be back. But I'm honestly hoping that's a blessing in disguise that she's out of Chicago because they have had some issues for years. And there needs to be bigger changes than just the head coach, if you ask me.
Sounds like franchise instability there. That's pretty much what it sounds like on a bunch of different levels. I'm sure Ice knows a lot more than she's saying. I know the look on Ice's face when Ice is holding something. I know we're going to ask her about this when we're off wax. But one thing I really wanted to get to before we got out of here, and this is something that touches on a bunch of different tempos, Ice, is the Players Association. They issued a very strong statement. I'm basically rebuking USA Today columnist Christine Brennan, a longtime columnist at a bunch of different levels, most recently at the Washington Post, now at USA Today, for a line of questioning pretty much surrounding Caitlin Clark being inadvertently hit in the face. And basically, it sounds like all-around coverage. From everything that I've gathered, it sounds like the players have not viewed her favorably because of her line of questioning, because her angles have been so Caitlin Clark heavy. Christine Brennan, I will say, for her legendary status and everything else, man, she is in the tank for Caitlin Clark. Like, she is riding that horse. And don't get me wrong,
she's writing a book.
She's writing a book, right?
She's writing a book on Caitlin Clark. She's writing a book, yes, which is where a lot of us think that these questions are coming from, right? Not necessarily what's happening currently, but for her book. Yes.
Oh, I'm just going to leave the floor to you because you just came like out of a cannon. I'm being delicate. I'm being nice. No, go ahead and get your shots off because I have random thoughts, but you have very pointed thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. First, I'll say this. The situation, the relationship between WNBA players and the media this season has been challenged like no other. Mm-hmm. The relationship is not good. It's not a positive one, right? I feel like me personally, when I'm going to speak to these women, report on them, tell their stories, I want to be accurate and fair, yet critical, how I would treat anyone else, right? But we as the media continue to miss that mark as a whole, right? We continue maybe to, put a picture on the cover of a story as something that is misrepresenting what happened. And in this situation, the players felt like the media and Christine Brennan continued to ask a question about a narrative that was already squashed, that was already found not true, right? You go back to the footage, Caitlin Clark says, yeah, like she didn't mean to hit me. I didn't think that was intentional, playing basketball. You get poked in the eye, it happens. Absolutely. Dejanay Carrington, in her response to her, I don't even know why I would intend to hit anyone. Right. So to me, my first issue is actually with the question. Like, the question was, when you went and kind of swatted at Caitlin, did you intend to hit her in the eye? And if so, not if not, if so, could you just, or if not, either way, could you talk about what happened? In that question, to me, you're implying you're giving us your bias. You're showing us that, hey, when you went and kind of swatted, did you intend to hit her? Why would anyone playing basketball intend to poke someone in the eye, right? Like, that's not allowing for the integrity of the game and the players. That's not allowing for that to be assumed and honored, if that makes sense.
I'll put it like this. I will say this. I think you can ask the question. I don't think the first question, I think it was sloppily and poorly worded. Sure. But one thing that we are always taught as journalists is you never assume. You go and get whatever the facts is, you let the players speak for themselves. So she should have worded it, hey, you inadvertently hit her in the eye.
what did you see? What happened on that play? And you let the player speak for themselves. Because sometimes a player will tell you, I meant to hit that blankety blank right in the face. Like, that's just what it is. That's just completely what it is. I'm not saying that's what happened with Dejanay Carrington. I'm saying it has happened before. You can ask the question. The follow-up I thought was worse. The follow-up I thought was far worse, where she said, were you guys celebrating hitting her in the face? That's why I felt like it was below board and not necessarily fishing. But here's my point, my larger point. And it's not necessarily at Christine Brennan per se. And it was a point that of a previous guest that producer John had brought up to me in the text a couple of weeks ago. He was like, man, Jason Goff brought this up. And he said, Jason Goff brought this up to us in April, like right after the draft, right after the Final Four and everything else. He was like, look, when you open the big top, pretty much, when you open your sport and more eyeballs are coming to your sport, more media is coming to your sport, it's not all good people. I'm not saying that Christine Brennan is bad, but I'm saying it's not going to be all people who have the same intentions and the same appreciation and the same sense of history and knowledge that you. It's going to be people who show up for the very first time and believe that player X is the greatest thing since sliced bread because that's why they are here. And it's going to be on the players to be able to manage not just the media, but also the fans in a certain way, more so fans than media. And I think fans can be a little weird when you consider Twitter and all that type of stuff, because we don't know if these are real people. Like, that's the one thing I want to say whenever people are talking about like the harassment and everything else, and I'm not taking anything away from it because some of these people are vile and foul. I just want to make sure that the people responding make sure these are real people and not bots. But just in a general thing about bringing more eyeballs to the game and how everybody should handle it.
I'm with you. Bringing more fans to the game, more voices. Absolutely. Absolutely. But Christine Brennan is a trusted journalist for USA Today. Yeah. So if you have a credential, if you're allowed to show up at practice and have one-on-one time with players and ask questions and record these things, then there's an expectation that, you're going to respect players, you're going to respect narratives, etc. And so I stick by what I said first. I just felt like her question, like she was fishing. She was looking for a certain agenda and then didn't take the hint the first time when Dejanay Carrington tried to control the narrative and did. And then you're absolutely right with the follow-up. Here's my thing about the response from the players, right? They gave, it was I had came across it on Instagram, right? A 5-page response of, WNBA Players Association saying, basically, you cannot hide behind your tenure to unprofessional members of the media like Christine Brennan. That is who they address, that second paragraph too. So that goes back to my original point. I just think there's such a sour relationship between the players and the media that this example of Christine Brennan, it was made as an example. Maybe the players didn't use the right language. Maybe they came at her a bit harsh. I don't know. But also, you keep poking the bear, I'm going to get fed up and swing. And so I feel like the WNBA players are just fed up with the relationship with the media, with certain narratives, with certain falling into certain things. It is no secret that this has been the most racist, homophobic, bigotry. All of these things have constantly been a theme in the W this season. And so I feel like the players responded in this way as a message to send to the media that we are not going to stand for people who shouldn't be credentialed or aren't looking to move our game forward, tell stories, and push the league forward. I think the difference between right now, someone reporting for the NBA and WNBA, the difference is that the amount of new fans and new voices that are following one versus the other. So someone reporting for the NBA that says something dumb, it's a whole host of fans, a whole nation of people who could know that this is dumb because of the history that exists, because of the knowledge that exists, because of the fan bases that exist. For the W, it's people brand new out here. It's people brand new that are commenting and maybe watching their first playoff series, watching the first time they've never heard of a Dejanay Carrington. They started watching basketball only because of Caitlin Clark, only because of Angel Reese, right? We saw that the other day. Angel Reese at a Baltimore Ravens game, player went up and shook her hand. I started watching women's basketball because of you, to Angel Reese. And so as a reporter for WNBA, you got to understand the magnitude of that there are more voices, there are more people, and the integrity means that much more. And I felt like this situation maybe wasn't terrible on Christine Brennan, and she didn't necessarily deserve the press release, but I think the media deserved the message from the players.
I think I will I will say one thing, because I didn't have a problem with anything you said. I think this is where we have a bigger problem societally. This is not just WNBA, because we just watched a presidential debate where a legacy media company said, we're not going to fact check a vice presidential candidate as terms of televising a vice presidential debate.
Yeah.
Journalism, the way that I was taught, is not about saying what you want to hear, asking questions that you want to hear. Sometimes it is asking difficult questions of powerful people and saying things that people don't want to hear. So a lot of times, unless you work for the W, it's not necessarily your job to amplify the W in that way. It's your job to go and tell stories and make them compelling. And if they just so happen to amplify and grow the league, you're not supposed to make up stuff, but you're supposed to report on what's in front of you. One thing I have seen, and in a larger point, I think, is, Ice, we don't know how to talk about women's basketball as an athletic endeavor, right? Just talk about women as athletes. Because when we talk about men in certain ways, and we can use certain adjectives, there aren't all the overarching societal labels that have been, hoisted upon these people as negatives. So naturally, when you say something like, "Oh man, these players are jealous of Caitlin Clark," if that was said about LeBron James coming in as a rookie, it was said coming in about LeBron James as a rookie with Carlos Boozer and Darius Miles and Ricky Davis. They thought LeBron was just a dude. They didn't think LeBron was that good at all, and those were his teammates. And it was clear that there was jealousy there on his own team. And we reported that and said, and didn't frame it in such a way that it was taken in a sensitive manner. But because we're dealing with largely Black women, and Black women have been marginalized in so many different other areas, we can't even say, "Hey, man, are y'all sensitive to this attention that Caitlin Clark is getting because of all the eyeballs in a competitive way?" Because we don't know how to talk about it, and sometimes people don't know how to necessarily receive it. I don't think jealousy, if it is jealousy, I'm not talking about the Dejanay Carrington situation. I'm talking about just the situation as a whole. If players were jealous of Caitlin Clark and the attention that she brought, and they wanted to bring it to her extra hard because they didn't think that she was it, I think that's natural competitiveness. I don't think that's necessarily something that is inherently bad. But because we're saying it and it's all these other labels that are involved, it just feels different. And I hope we can get to the point that whenever we talk about these issues, we can address them as athletes and not have to worry about all the other things and other labels that society has put on them.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because, sports reflects our society.
Absolutely.
And so you don't just come as a sports fan. You also come with whatever else you are. I come as a Black woman that's from Jersey that's also a sports fan. You know what I'm saying? Like former hooper. You come with all these things that you are. But what I will say is that with all of the viewers and the eyeballs and the voices, it's so important, I think, to represent the product on the floor accurately.
Absolutely.
And so I think the main goal, and what I'd like to say, is just that as a reporter, that's what I think about, is that I would like to represent on the floor, the people on the floor, the product on the floor accurately, whether it's from breaking down the X's and O's or asking them these things. And I just think the question that Christine Brennan asked did not look to accurately represent players in the right lighting. And it falls into this same cycle that we've been in all season of these players are jealous of her. Exhibit A, did you intentionally mean to hit her?
Right.
Why would
right.
I? You know what I'm saying? Like
right,
it feeds into that notion. And that's a cycle that we need to stop, we as the media. And that's a cycle that the Players Association is trying to stop, right? Is this notion that exists. I'll be totally honest. Here's my response to people saying players are jealous of Caitlin Clark. They're no more jealous of her because she is the best player on another team that's not their team. To me, that's what it is. It's just a competitive nature. Like, you're the best player on another team where my job today is to beat you. So I'm competitive. I don't think it's jealousy. I think it's a competitive nature. And we have to stop faulting women for being competitive, whether it's through comments or conversations or through physical play, etc. Like, allow women's sports to be competitive. Period. There's no standard. It just is that.
Yeah. But once again, I'm not saying that jealousy is a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I don't even know if it's that. I just think it's a competitive spirit.
Yeah, I think it's part of competitiveness. Like, you grew up in Jersey. If somebody say, "Hey man, that girl across town, she live." Oh, she live? Y'all think she better than me? I'm going to bring it to them. I think that's natural. And I think that's cool. Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it's not jealousy. It's just the sport. It's what comes with it. Like, if you're not thinking that, you're doing something wrong.
No. But I think it would be also natural if there are people who are watching basketball for the first time and they're saying, oh my God, she is so good. She's the best thing ever. And they don't know the history of it. And then you still got players who are in this game, like, actually making history. And they're saying, like, I mean, she's great. She's good. She's great. But there will be players that have been here before, and there are players who are still here.
Right.
And
there will be ones that come after.
Why didn't we get this attention? You know, and I think that's natural. Why didn't we get? Why don't I have a shoe deal? You know what I mean? And it's funny, people make the Angel Reese comparison, the Angel Reese Caitlin Clark rivalry. The real rivalry is going to be Juju Watkins when she steps in the league. That's when everybody's glass half full. That's when it's going to get live. That's what I'm waiting for. Whenever she comes out, I can't wait.
Yeah, you say Juju, I say Paige Beckers. I think for a long time, Gino Auriemma has told us the most efficient player in college basketball last season was the player on his team. And
it's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to go. John is going to take that out. That's not going to make it. But I just had to say it. John's going to play some music there. And that's not going to make today's show. That's what that is. And that is all we've got for you today. Thanks to Ice for being one half of today's show. She's going to be joining us every single Wednesday during the season. So get comfortable with her. Thanks to producer John and the entire team who works so hard from behind the scenes. I'll be back next week with another episode of The Good Word. Until then, everybody be safe.